Today we are honored to welcome Alfredo Borodowski to the show today. I'm very excited to have him on. This is a very important topic that he talks about. He talks about leadership, right? And he helps many people become better leaders. And as we were talking about, leadership is something that we all have capabilities towards, right? We all have a need and a drive to be a leader in a sense. And this man right here is very good at showing people how to do this. He's an expert in this, and I'm very excited to have him on. How are you today, man?
Good. Great to be here, Anthony.
Yeah,
Let's
very
see.
excited.
Let's see if we can make a leader of everybody. Everybody's a leader on
Let's do
something.
it.
Doesn't matter what. Okay. Even leading your life, which is the most important leadership you can have.
100%. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into leadership and everything you're doing to help people today.
Yes. Look, I do positive psychology. In my case, it came out of a tragedy where, in life, I lost everything I had. I was manic. I was undiagnosed bipolar, and a policeman gave me a shield, a copy of his shield. That's friends and family shields, and told me you will have no problems in your life. By the way, those shields should be illegal. I go around the world telling my story, and when I tell them that here in the States, a policeman can give a friend a replica of the shield to have no problems, they can't believe it. They
Hmm.
can't believe it. In our country of equality, you can do, have something like it, but well, yes. And he gave me a replica of his shield. I was manic. I was taking an antidepressant because I lied to my psychiatrist because I wanted to be more manic. Manics want to be, they want to be manic to have energy and creativity. And I began patrolling the streets of highways of New York, telling people how to drive, believing that I was a police officer. Until one day, I showed the badge to a young woman, and she made a phone call, and 2 minutes later, I had three patrols behind me. They arrested me. They took me later that day to court, and they charged me with impersonating a police officer, a serious felony. Okay, and I went on TV, CNN, as a big menace to society. I appeared on front pages of newspapers from Ireland to Japan, and I went it began having so many court cases because people, when they saw me on TV, would come out of the woods and say, "He did it to me, he did it to me, he did it to me." Then I had like 10 court cases, and my lawyer said the police wants to make an exemplar out of you. For a year, you had to keep it low, not driving, not doing basically anything with your life. And I went into a deep depression, living my life on a couch. And Anthony didn't see any light, all obscurity and darkness. And till one morning, I felt an energy that pushed me up from the couch to my office on the first floor. And I walked into the office, and I saw on my desk something which I had no idea, no clue how it got there. It was a yellow file. I opened it, and they were the results of a positive psychology test I had taken a few years before, and it showed my 5 top strengths: creativity, love of learning, curiosity, bravery, and perseverance. And Anthony, I said, wow, that's myself. I feel like you forgot who you are. And with all the depression and with all the cases, I went back to school a month later, to social work school, to become a therapist. And with the cases and with depression, knowing my strengths of positive psychology, I was the best student, the highest grade. I was given the highest award by the school for being the most inspiring student, all through the power of knowing my top 5 strengths of positive psychology. And I said I had to go through life giving people the gift. of the top strengths of positive psychology.
Oh, it's an incredible story, man. I mean, overcoming all that and getting where we are today, it's really inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So it kind of was helpful for you in a sense to kind of find out your strengths and weaknesses, it sounds like, through coming like that. And it kind of gave you a sense of direction. Do I have that right?
Yes, sense of
Yeah.
purpose. That's the way
Yeah.
the word I like to use, purpose. And purpose today, positive psychology is a science, okay, that was founded in 1998. It's a science of flourishing. Then it's a science with experiments at the biggest labs, psychological labs around the world with papers. We're talking about serious stuff. And we have definitions today, very precise definitions for things that before we had an intuitive feeling of what they mean. Now we know exactly what they mean. And one of them is purpose. And purpose, we define it as giving the best of yourself for the benefit of others. That no matter what you do, okay, if you find a way to find the best in you and give it to the world, knowing that this will benefit the world, that's basically purpose. And no matter what you do, you're going to find what is called fulfillment, no success. Success is the product of results. Fulfillment is the product of purpose. Then people, what they are doing, they're investing all their time to be successful. Well, usually it's material success, usually is power, usually is making to an objective. And then they come to me and say, I feel empty. Why? They don't find an alignment between their strengths and giving the best of themselves for the benefit of others, which brings fulfillment, which is not about having, it's about being better.
I
Okay,
love that.
that,
Yeah.
that's what purpose is.
Sounds like having that sense of self awareness kind of gives you a sense of direction and purpose. Like, if people are struggling with finding out who they are, they just perhaps don't have direction in their life. Where do you recommend the first steps to kind of knowing yourself and going along from there?
Then we know there are 24 character strengths of positive psychology. And we know if you know your top five, you have the chance of flourishing 9 times more just by knowing them. And if you apply them, 18 times more. Then we also know from studies that 7 out of 10 people in America are not aware of the top 5 strengths. And there is a epidemic of blindness of strength in our society. Then 7 out of 10 people walking around you are going through life 9 to 18 times below their potential.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I see it. Like, so many of us were not like having a sense of direction. We don't know where we're going in a sense. And we kind of been living this life that we've been told to live, like follow the rules and do these things, but we're not really fulfilled, as you mentioned.
Right. Then the first thing that people need to do is to know the top 5 strengths, which they already have, by the way, they already have, but because they don't know them, they cannot apply them consciously. It's like not knowing the tools you have in your toolkit. Okay, then you do things and you fix things and you improve things, but you don't have a full capacity to using the tools that you already have to be excellent, to create excellence in your life.
100%. Yeah. As you mentioned, purpose, you said it was basically becoming the best version of you and being of service to others. And
Yes.
I think that's key because it's all about growth and service. So I say that all the time. Like the foundation of purpose is growth and service, but how we express that is usually gonna be different for everyone. Like we all have different lives, obviously. So just kind of getting to know that is key.
Yes. Yes, growth and service is another way of defining purpose. It's the same principle. I work a lot with purpose. We have now, in the last 3 months, it has been developed what is called the purpose factor, and the purpose factor is the first instrument, a scientific instrument to measure purpose. Then you take the instrument and you receive a 50-page feedback on all the components of your purpose. We didn't have that before. It's only 3 months old. I am blessed to be among the founding certified practitioners of the instrument. Then I am a founding practitioner. And that's an instrument that is going to change the field. Now I can go to a company or work one-on-one with a person, take the instrument, and we already have a very accurate picture of the purpose of that person.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. I mean, because I look at like research studies a lot, and like we know like it actually improves like your overall well-being and things like that. Like just just in terms of wellness, so we think of like nutrition, exercise, but having that sense of purpose, man, it elevates your whole state of being, and now you have that tool to kind of measure that. That's awesome.
Yes, I work with different tools. I am a tool-based consultant. When I go to companies or work with people, we take tools. I say it's like going to a doctor to having a physical, and the doctor doesn't take your blood or your blood, or your blood pressure or your weight. Then how can you have a base to diagnose and go ahead in the best possible way if you don't have first a good diagnosis? Then I use a lot of diagnostic instruments before I work, companies, leaders, and this is, I think, the best instrument I've seen, this new instrument on purpose. It's called the purpose factor, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, having that sense of awareness is key, and that's what it all starts, man. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So, in terms of leadership, this is such a huge and important topic. How would you define leadership, and what are some common misconceptions that you see in people?
Yeah, leadership for me and an effective leadership, and look, maybe one of the themes with more books written about, but for me, a leader is the one today who leads the paradigm of fixing into the paradigm of nourishing.
Very interesting.
Okay, okay, the one who leads the old paradigm of fixing into the paradigm of nourishing, because much of the leaders who are placed on leadership positions are brought to solve a problem, fixing. Okay, and as they succeed fixing, they forget that the number one leadership is not fixing, it's nourishing.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
they go from problem to problem, put out the fires, and become professional fixers. And the difference between good leadership, good companies, are the companies and leaders who move from fixing to nourishing. Because fixing is about survival, and nourishing is about growth and excellence. Then you have a leak at your basement, and the basement is flooding, and you call a plumber. The plumber is going to stop the leak, fix it. That's not going to make it better plumbing. That's going to bring things to the way they were before. Even if you are at the company and you make more profit, by the way, fixing, you make more profit, but the things are the same, and the people lose their motivation, lose their resilience and hope. The leader, but nourishing is not about fixing, keeping things the way they were. It's about excellence, helping people to acquire full potential, be happy, be resilient, and the results are going to be much bigger. But then that's what I help leaders to be nourishers. And I do it with managers and team leaders, and the results are tremendous.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Like, I always say, like, it all starts with you, right? Like being the model and the life for others. And we do that based on how we live our lives, right? As we start to kind of develop these standards within ourselves, then we can really be a teacher. Is that right?
Yes, everything, it sounds selfish, but everything begins with the self. Okay, you don't have control of yourself. You cannot help others, and And working on the self is the most difficult work there is. It entails a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Then the part of the fixing mentality is that it's easier to tell other people what to do and how to fix themselves than to work on the improvement of the self. It's much more easier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because like taking that like a 100% responsibility, as you mentioned, and cultivating that standard of excellence within ourselves, that's the most important work. And even if you don't get paid for that, seemingly, right? But working on yourself, building your character, all these things, that's what actually leads to being a leader. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
You know the, you know the first lead is the leadership is the leadership of the self. That you're going to find in most of the wise traditions. It's all about funding the self. But when your total leadership is about fixing a problem, you externalize everything. Okay, it's about fixing the external, give you the sense that you are fixing also nourishing. I don't even want nourishing the external. You know, the problem is that we work on the fixing, then I'm going to use fixing. Fixing the external give you the sense that you are nourishing the self.
Yeah,
And that's an illusion.
right.
Because
Yeah, I can relate to that.
the problems are going to come back. Your problems are going to come back no matter how much you affect the external.
Definitely. Yeah, I can relate to that in a sense of being a health coach. Like a coach, it's not about telling people what to do, as you mentioned. It's really about empowerment, right? Really guiding people to their own answers. That's what a real leader does, that's what a real coach does. And because what you're doing is you're empowering that person instead of having them dependent on you. So then that other person becomes a leader and is able to do the same.
Yeah, look, we know from education that people respond much strongly, much to what they found themselves than what they are told. Then the work of the coach is to help people find something, not to tell them something. But it's very tempting for the coach to deliver solutions because that make coaches feel that they are justifying that they've been paid, but and also for their ego. And I know about that because it's something I struggle with myself. But at the end of the day, the answers a person finds within are more powerful than the answers that people are told.
100%. Because they actually start to believe it in a sense, right? Because a lot of times you hear things from external and coming from an authority figure, and they may be valuable or they may not, but you need to customize it. Like, because a coach, like, if you just tell people what to do and give them like your thing, like this is what you need to do, and not actually listen to the other person and kind of personalize it in a sense, that's where the problem lies. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, when we start to cultivate these traits of leadership within ourselves, and maybe we're just starting the process, where do you recommend we begin? Like, of course, we start with us, but what are some common roadblocks you see in people that are just hard to overcome in order to become that leader they need to be?
Yes, I mean, again, I'm going to be insistent. The first thing you do is, and I'm going to tell people who are listening how to do it, but the first thing they need to do is the top five strengths and begin working on them. I mean, you have to work from a position of strength. There is now all this issue about working from vulnerability, with Rene Brown has made famous, be vulnerable, and they redefine vulnerability as being courageous and being, true to yourself. I disagree. Okay, the word vulnerable means fragile. Okay, why to change a word that is clear in its meaning to create some kind of good selling point about it? Okay, there is no place I go where they don't ask me about vulnerability. No, I want people to begin from a position of strength,
Yeah.
character strength.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or, yeah, 100%.
then I want people to begin from strength. Okay, we have enough vulnerability with the AI, not in our companies and organizations. So people already feel vulnerable. People feel anxious, uncertain, depressed. Okay, they don't need a sense of vulnerability now. They need a lot of strength to be able to deal with reality.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's a change of paradigm I'm making. Enough of vulnerability. I hear it everywhere. It sounds so nice, vulnerability. Okay, well, the problem is not vulnerability. The problem is that we feel broken.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need more vulnerability. We need strength,
Yeah.
positivity, as in positive psychology. Then that's the answer I will give you, Anthony, and every company anywhere I go. We begin with strength clarification.
Yeah.
From that we can now leader, you ask about leaders, then leaders are the ones who create a space for people to apply their strengths, an opportunity for
Definitely.
people to apply their strengths. Okay, the same thing goes for managers. Okay, they are people who create systems, opportunities for others to apply the strength and be at the best they can be.
100%. Yeah.
That's what the leader is for me.
Yeah. Strength to deal with reality. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Authenticity, maybe a better word, just leading from a place of strength, right? Like just being like just real and just kind of like looking at things. Yeah. 100%. And
Authenticity, there is a school, especially coming from the Nebraska psychological school, the University of Nebraska, who do a lot of positive psychology, where they like to talk about authentic leadership, okay, which is very important. Then absolutely, the leadership has to be authentic. But I don't work so much about what the leadership should be. I work more about expressions of leadership in terms of what they should do for the other. And for in today's world, I think they need to enable people to apply their strengths, character strengths we call them, because they're not strength in positive psychology. They're not just strength of being strong. They are character strengths. They affect the person as a totality, on their goals, on their passion, on their motivation, resilience. It's a
yeah.
holistic approach.
How do you recommend we start to develop that inner strength? Because that's so key. Like having that strong sense of character and sense of self, like it's so important. Like, what are your recommendation to actually start that?
I mean, I think that one of the things about inner strength is to be in control of your internal dialogue.
Hmm.
Around 77% of thoughts we have on any given day, an average person are negative. Then we are negativity machines, and we are the writers of our own story. In fact, reality begins with an internal story that we project externally. We manifest what we write internally and becomes our reality. We think about, let's wait for things to change for us to whatever. And the real equation is, let's change our story internally and make things happen. You have much more control and much more intention. But we do not think in those terms because we write the story internally, of which we are already writing it for so long that we write it in automatic pilot. And then we write tragedies about ourselves, or we write comedy, or whatever you write about yourself without being aware of it, because you began writing it years ago. Then we are writing our script of life without the intentionality of what we want to write. And we become victims of our own writing. Then the first thing we need to do is, when you're having a negative internal dialogue, it is difficult, but you can stop. and ask the question of what kind of writer I am. And if you do that frequently, you're going to be finding a pattern of which writer of your life you are, and you can begin the process of becoming a different kind of writer.
That's powerful, man.
Okay, but the question is from the the question is that is that you put your hand in front of you, okay? Your your um, your brain doesn't distinguish, and then you close your eyes and you think about the hand. What studies show us is that the brain doesn't distinguish between seeing the actual hand and thinking about the hand, which means reality is as much as what we visualize and as what is external to us. Then visualization we have internally is as real as the world, and we have a lot of control over that. Then begin by visualizing what you want, and the chances are that you're going to get it. But if you do not visualize and you're negative internally, the chances are that you're not going to get it.
Yeah, 100%. How do we start to rewrite our story, right? Because as you mentioned, like becoming aware of things that we may be thinking throughout the day and just like, what story are we writing, right? But then how do we start to develop a higher sense of identity in a sense? Like, how do we start to see ourselves different in our trajectory in life?
Well, you have to have the capacity to stop. Really, like we have negative thoughts at the speed of light, basically, in the brain. Then and we have internal dialogue, rumination of negativity, and you have to be able to like stop, like have an internal alarm. Stop and ask the question: what am I writing? Which kind of writer I am? And if you do it enough times, you begin to see a pattern of writing. You may ask also people that you trust, friends, wife, mentors. Okay, what do you think? How do you see writing my own story? How do I talk? By the way, if you talk using the words always, never, always me, okay, usually you are a negative writer because you're writing what is called universalistic determined language. Okay, especially when something bad happens to you. It never anything good happens to me. I always fail. Okay, nobody likes me. More you use those words which are like very broad on the negative, very broad, universalistic words, more pessimistic you usually are, but if something bad happens to you and you begin, well, this time I was tired. Sometimes I fail at things. Okay, this wasn't my best day. Then you use all those words which are limited in time and space. Okay, then you have to be attentive to the language you use. That sometimes I give people the exercise of doing the following. Something happens to you, negative, and I want you to write it down. The same story that it happened to you, negative. Write it two versions. A version using always, never, always me, and write the same story using all the other ones, sometimes this time, and you will have the same event, negative event, and two different kind of energies and two kind of writers. I do this with leaders, by the way, and I do this on each workshop I give. It's a staple of my workshops, write the same story, negative story using this kind of vocabulary and this other kind, and you will see an optimist and a pessimist under the same events. Okay, the same events, but the way you tell the story is going to determine which kind of person you are. It's a great exercise.
Yeah. It's really becoming aware of those patterns, as you mentioned. And a lot of
Yeah.
these things we say to ourselves, they're not even true, right? So just really getting to the truth of the situation. Like, do you really always do this thing? Or maybe, because like it takes inner strength to actually realize that and actually say what is real.
90% of the time is a lie. We lie to ourselves all the time. We are pathological self liars.
Yeah. Man, why do you think that is? Like, why is it so difficult to actually tell the truth to ourselves?
Because negativity is a mechanism of defense. It comes from the time of the caves, where cave people, where you were negative, you felt safe because negativity was a mechanism of survival. If you went out to hunt a tiger or a bear, the chances is that you were going to be hunted by the animal rather than the other way around. Then to be protective of the self was the best thing you could do to survive. Okay, negativity is good for survival. And this got implanted on the amygdala on the back of the brain, which is the first thing that we developed. Then it's the oldest thing, and we're still functioning on that way. That negativity is safe. Okay, negativity is protective. It's a mechanism of defense. Um, and if we're still working on the paradigm from the cave times, if my spear is longer, I'm going to get the animal, you're not going to get it. Then if my car is just a few miles faster, I'm more powerful than you are. There is no difference between a longer spear on the cave times and cars today. We have not evolved at that level. And by the way, from there comes the unhappiness, that we still work on the negative part of the self, a mechanism of defense. Positivity is not the natural state of the human being. Positivity is an acquired attitude through intention and work. We are not positive beings. We are programmed to be negative. The positive people are the ones who work for positivity. It's hard. You work to be positive. It doesn't. It happens naturally for a very few people, Anthony.
That's a great point. Yeah, it does take a lot of work to do that because, like, happiness, it's like, it's something that you have to choose to experience in a sense, right? Like, you can cultivate it, but of course, like things are going to happen through our life. But how we start to be intentional, right? Like, how do we actually want to feel and experience reality? That's up to us, right? And it's
Yes,
becoming, could be becoming aware.
yes. It's an intention.
Yeah. Speaking of that, like how do we start to become more happy if that's what we want? Like, how do we choose to actually be more fulfilled and happy? Right? Because if we're going to experience different emotions through our life, but how do we start to change the thermostat in a sense to actually be more positive?
No, you have to align your strengths, your pleasure, and your purpose. Okay? Then you have to do what you feel is the best of you, that you feel pleasure doing it, using your natural strengths. You have to have alignment. These three things have to be aligned. Okay,
Yeah,
purpose, pleasure, and strengths.
that makes sense. Because alignment is so key. Because I feel like we're scattered in a lot of things. Like we may have a few pieces, but we're just not fully integrated in a sense.
Yeah, we are fragmented. It's the most
Yeah,
fragmented humanity we ever had. Then,
yeah,
but again, we have the tools today through instruments for strength finding, of purpose psychology. We have now the purpose factor for purpose. We have the instruments today. Before you had to spend, years to find purpose and find your strengths. Now take you half an hour for each one of them.
100%. Something we mentioned previously is cultivating a standard of excellence, right? I think that's so key, like, because a lot of us were kind of operating out of our subpar potential, kind of this mediocre existence in a sense. And if we start to cultivate higher standards with ourselves, man, there's like we don't really know what's possible because we have like infinite potential. I see.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, we shouldn't use the word perfection. Perfection is a recipe for frustration and depression. Excellence is always a journey. You become a little bit more excellent every day. Then excellence is all process, no destination. Eh, when I go to work at companies, actually people think positive psychology is going to make things easy for people, and it's the other way around. Because once you know your strengths, and the team, the leader, and the company give you the tools to express your strength, then you cannot be mediocre. Okay.
100%.
Okay. Once you know your strengths and you know your purpose and you have the tools to do it, then there is a very little space for the mediocrity. Then don't think that positive psychology, we did its name positive psychology is about the rosy, easy way to go. No, actually, it's the most difficult way to go because the positive, the intentional, the purpose is the road to most responsibility that you can have.
Yeah. Cultivate standards of excellence. So there's no room for mediocrity. I like
No,
that.
I hate that. When they tell me what is number one in a word that you will not allow for, you work with companies and you work with teams and yourself is mediocrity. And mediocrity at whatever you do, I don't care if whatever activity you do and whatever kind of work you have. In every situation you are and in every work you have, there is mediocrity or excellence.
Yeah. How you do anything? It's how you do everything for sure.
And it's internal. It comes always from the internal sense.
Yeah. You would also mention perfection, right? It's not about being perfect. It's more so about progress, right? 'Cause there's always progress to be made. It's always a process too. And as soon as we find out we're there, or we're just kind of like expect like no mistakes, I mean, that's where we start to get frustrated and we stop making progress. And as
Yeah.
long as we focus on the journey, that's where it's at.
That's why we are not fixing nourishing. Because fixing is about finding mistakes. And we think that by finding mistakes, we create excellence. That's not true. We find excellence by nourishing people. Yes, we had to address the mistakes and we had to get better, okay? And we had to learn from the mistakes. But that's not the way to progress. Nourishing is the way to progress. I always tell managers you begin a review, what they call performance review. I hate that term, but that's the way it is called. You begin a performance review always with three things positive about the person. You begin always with three things positive, then you can go into something that needs to be improved. But we always begin with emphasizing at least three positive, then to go into improvement. Okay? That's a way to do it effectively.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, having that ability to self-assess and actually see where we are is so important because, like, again, we don't have awareness of what we're doing and how we're kind of responding to situations. Like, we can't really see how to improve. So just being real with ourselves and where we want to go.
Yeah. Then, I want to tell your audience how to get the top five strengths. I think that's important because I've been talking so much about it. And I know that you have a technologically astute uh, audience. It's very easy. You just take your phone and you text positive to 33777. Very simple. Just text positive to 33777, and I will send you the list of the 24 character strengths of positive psychology, a couple of questions to direct you how to get your top five, and a couple of exercises how to maximize your potential from 9 to 18 times just by texting me.
Appreciate that,
Because
man. It's really generous.
I want everybody to have the top strengths.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's so valuable, right? Because just having that awareness and then going from there and seeing if there's anything that we need to work on in our lives, right? Because is there anything that's kind of like holding us back? Anything we need to work on in terms of our character that's preventing us from reaching our goals, things like that. It's so important.
Yeah.
So if we're, say, maybe addressing certain things in our lives and we're maybe starting that process of self-assessment, right? How do we kind of filter our decisions through our values, right? Because our values are so key, but having a sense of direction in that sense of just knowing where to go and how to decide, like that can kind of be confusing for some people.
Well, that's why the strength of positive psychology are called character strengths. Mind where creativity, love of learning, curiosity, perseverance, and bravery. Now, once there are character strengths. They're not talents. They're not skills. Then once you know your top strengths, you begin thinking from a value perspective. What you can add to the world. What is your purpose? Okay, that's why it's so important that people know the top five character strengths, because they're values. Okay, when you act at your best of yourself, you usually act good and well. You are not, like you said before, going in many different directions. You act according to what are your top five strengths. They move you to be the best of yourself.
Yeah, makes sense. And in terms of leadership, I feel like 100% responsibility for our lives is so key. You want to speak on that a little bit because there's so many things that we've gone through and things that we need to overcome, and taking that 100% responsibility in our lives. Like I like to say, not everything in your life is your fault necessarily, but how we respond to it, we get to decide what happens next. Do you want to respond to that a little bit?
I love Victor Frankl, who is the great who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, maybe one of the greatest books written. The father of logotherapy, who survived concentration camps in Auschwitz and went through the horror of the Holocaust to become one of the biggest people on meaning in life. He writes in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, that next to the Statue of Liberty, America should have built also the Statue of Responsibility. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a big issue, okay? A big issue. We have misused freedom. I remember here during the pandemic, where really on the worst time, they were interviewing a family somewhere, I will not say where, that threw a pool party for the entire neighborhood during the worst of the pandemic on the most contagious time. And you saw like 50 people in a crowded pool. And the journalist interviewed them. What are you doing? And the woman said, I have my right to happiness, and nobody has the right to tell me what to do. Okay, uh, that's you know, there is an abuse of liberty for the sake of my own fulfillment.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I think that we have a project. We have to build next to the Statue of Liberty another statue called the Statue of Responsibility. I will happily give a contribution for that.
Yeah. A lot of times we put like immediate gratification over the long term mission, right? We kind of like sacrifice.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, it's like we need to sacrifice who we are for what we could become in a sense. Like, do the hard thing up front and get the results that we want in life instead of like, do the short term thing and it's not really going to get us anywhere in a sense.
yes, yes. I agree 100% with you.
Yeah. And I'm sure that like fear is a huge topic as well, right? Because this
Yes,
kind of has
yes,
been a little bit like we talked about like a little bit, but kind of underlining that in a sense because fear is such a huge thing we have to overcome within ourselves, right?
yes.
And we have to make a fundamental decisions if we're going to live by faith or fear, right? Courage or not.
Yeah, there is a good fear, by the way. I think which is the paralyzing fear, and there's a good fear, which is the fear of not taking full advantage of what I could in my life. Okay, the fear of betraying my potential. Okay, about betraying my potential. That's a fear I have of wasting my potential. That's why I work very hard every day to do the best I can with the tools I have. Then there are two fears. There is a fear of paralyzing, and there is a fear that is motivating. We just need to be careful not to confuse them.
Yeah. I like to say with no fear, right? KNOW. We have to understand our tendencies, our predispositions to things. And it really comes down to knowing yourself because then you can move with it in an intelligent manner instead of just having it paralyze you in a sense.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's not like having no fear. Like, as you mentioned, we have it. And it's more so about how you use it. It's like, it's like courage is not the absence of fear, it's having it and doing it anyways.
Right.
Yeah. Just being courageous in our life is so key, man, because once we decide to live a life of greatness and become a leader, like you really need to overcome who you are, and that takes courage. Like because the person in the life that you desire, like where you are, it's not where you get you where you want to be. So you need to develop yourself. Like success is something you attract by the person you become, in a sense.
Yes. I mean, again, I like to talk more about fulfillment rather than success, which is a product of purpose. I think it's like the word says fulfillment. If I'm full, more than success is never will never fill you. Success calls for more success and more success, and it's never satisfied.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's something I think we need to have a sharp distinction.
Yeah, because we're always motivated by these external things, right? And it never leads to that fulfillment. But as you're saying, like I think it's better to live life from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Because if we
Yeah.
start to develop these internal things and we start to live with passion, that's where we actually start to attract success, like real success, and we
Yes.
actually become fulfilled. I mean, that's so key, man.
Yeah. It's a key. That's a key thing.
Yeah. So, is there anything else on leadership that you would like to talk about? Anything that we haven't covered in, or what are your
No,
thoughts?
I mean, what I would like to say that is with the introduction of AI, okay, then there is more anxiety and more uncertainty, and the leaders have to give to people strength because there is going to be much advancement on technology, but a lot of pain at the human level, and the leadership that is more humane and take care of people is going to be more necessary than ever before.
Yeah, 100%. Because I feel like a lot of us, if we don't know who we are, we're not anchored in the truth, then it's going to be so much easier trying to get knocked off our path by anything, really.
Yep.
100%, man. All right, this has been awesome.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with us, inspiring us with all your insights. Man, you're so knowledgeable. Just listening to you, it's really special to watch. And we talked about so many different things. We talked about really becoming the best version of yourself, right? Finding our purpose, becoming in alignment, and a big theme was overcoming like our weaknesses and really stepping into our strength, living
Yes.
life from strength. Because there's a quote that's saying like, "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better." Right? And that's
Yes.
what it is. We can't control the outside circumstances, but we control how we respond, which is how we develop our character. And success is really overcoming ourselves. Like all these hardships, it forges our character to live the life we want to lead. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, appreciate you, man.
Well, thank you for the great questions and the opportunity to share some of my, views or wisdom, if you want to call it.
It's been fun. So if people want to connect with you and your work, where can we find you?
Very simple. First, on the positive 33777, I share also there my calendar for those who want to talk. But also I recommend my website, Positive AB, Alfredo Borodowski, positiveab.com. There you can learn about my books and my seminars and everything is there.
All right. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.